Joe's gonna be friggin' pissed, I'll tell you, because he has a serious FOMO about not being in on this episode, and he recorded a little ditty for us beforehand. And I'll tell you what, Rich Keefe of #Dork, it's in a file that I can't upload to StreamYard, so he's gonna be really upset. Yes.
Did you get a chance to listen to it yet, or watch?
I did. Yes, I did. I'll tell you what.
You want to act it out for us?
No, not really, because Joe does this whole like, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of all ages. Like he does that whole thing, and I don't want to show him up because he already feels bad. He's worried you're going to Adam Cole him, so I don't want to.
It's possible.
I don't want to give.
Possible. I could take on another podcast if anybody's interested. Yep.
I don't want to go and put that in the back of his head. But maybe if you're listening in the audio version, you'll hear Joe's little introduction. But yes, Joe is now in parts unknown after giving me a ton of shit for going on a friggin' honeymoon. I am back from my journeys overseas to talk about the most important character in comics for me. And would you say most important for you, Rich, or your favorite of all time? I know that for sure.
I mean, without a doubt, my favorite. Again, if you're saying most important, it probably does stem off of Batman, right?
Yep.
Like, 'cause without Batman, we don't have Red Hood. But like, he's without question my favorite. And we're gonna get to all the stuff that he's in, like not just in comics. I feel like even still, with all these stories that have been put on TV and put on film, it's like an untapped.
Yes.
Like home run of a movie and a story, and then like an offshoot from there, and you can do all kinds of stuff with him. Like he's pretty popular. He's not clearly the most popular, but he's had his own line of comics for a while. That the fact that he's not in movies or that more people don't feel the way that you and I feel about him is a little surprising to me.
Yeah. So today we are doing something that TLDR we have never done before, a strict character study on one individual. Rich and I are talking about Red Hood. And for me, he's not only my favorite, but I would say is one of the most important character in comics for me. Because as a kid, Wolverine, Gambit, those were my guys. Obviously, like Batman a lot too, but I was never a huge DC guy. And then I did step away from reading comics for a time and then came back, and Red Hood, after you talked about him so much on Dork, Red Hood was the guy that sucked me back in. And it was just like life-changing for me, quite honestly. So this character is the most important one for me. So I'm very excited to break him down, get in some detail. And as you look in the episode description, this is not just for people who are new to the character, but I think this is for people who love the character as well. Because like you said, Rich, there's just not enough Red Hood content out there. Like there's a good amount of comics. There's, we're starting to see some more stuff in shows. We got the animated movie, but definitely an untapped resource still, I think, in DC. And it's had some issues lately, and we'll get to all that too. But I think first, when it comes to Red Hood, where we have to start is his origin story. Pretty simple. We all know that he was the second Robin. We all know that he was introduced as Red Hood in Under the Red Hood, which is by Judd Winnick, along with his several artists that he worked with. You got that in your background as well.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Doug Mankey, Shane Davis, Eric Battle. Where things start to change a little bit is what happens after Joker kills him and how he becomes Red Hood. So the original version was that Superboy Prime in Infinite Crisis, he goes and punches through reality in his prison, and then that wakes up Jason. Then he goes and is taken care of by Talia al Ghul because she finds out that he's come back to life. He was kind of a mess. She, after trying to restore him, can't do it, uses the Lazarus Pit against Ra's al Ghul's best wishes, or wishes, whatever. And then he comes back, and now he's back to being Jason Todd, but a little bit more improved version, and a bit of an asshole who's out for some vengeance.
Sure was.
Then there's some other versions of it, but is that the one that you go by when it comes to Red Hood?
Yes. And then, so like you said, there's other stories that use a different origin story or a different background. Now the Joker thing is always kind of the same.
Yes.
But I love the idea of him in the Lazarus Pit because, first of all, it's comics. So like how many characters really die and how many characters really stay dead. But one of the reasons why I love this origin story so much is he goes from getting actually killed by the Joker. Like the Joker kills a lot of like nameless, faceless people, but usually like when it comes to like within the Bat family, like, oh, maybe he kidnaps somebody or maybe he beats somebody up pretty good or he almost kills somebody, he almost gets somebody, but no, he kills them. And then you
Mm-hmm.
have Talia al Ghul, and then that relationship with Batman slash Bruce Wayne is so important, leads to another Robin down the line. But the fact that she's the one that saves them, and then you get Ra's al Ghul involved, and he's like, "Don't fucking mess around with this. You don't want to be messing around with it." So now you're taking a Jason Todd character, which admittedly was not a well liked Robin in his run,
No.
but you completely make him the most interesting guy suddenly in the DC universe because of all those connections. I mean, he has a direct relationship to Joker, the Al Ghul's, and clearly Batman, and then how he feels about Batman after the fact. And because it's the Lazarus Pit, like that's gonna throw some shit off a little bit. So you're not getting
Yes.
the same guy that you had before. And then training with Talia al Ghul is also going to put a different spin on it. So he has all the stuff that he learned from Batman, but Batman clearly is not going to teach you how to kill. And then he goes and works with all these killers around the world. And now you're like, that is probably the most well-trained killing machine out there right now. And I love it.
Yeah, he's like it's very easy for both of us to just start getting to all the different things that we love about him.
Yeah.
And we will get to some more of his like training and everything too. But yeah, there's Talia al Ghul where she goes and takes care of him. Then you go to the new 52 version where Scott Lobdell really took over this character, and he's written Jason Todd, I believe, more, or at least Red Hood, more than anybody else. In that reintroduction to the character, we learn that he's been trained by the All Cast, which Talia set that whole thing up. Then you go over to Rebirth. Again, Lobdell's still writing their different artists. This is where we get Dexter Soy, who's my favorite Red Hood artist, excuse me.
Yep.
And there's a bit of a catch up there, but at the same time, it's like he says the Lazarus Pit brought me back to life, which is different than what happened with Winnick. And then you go over to the animated version and Raj Al Ghul, where he's the one who he didn't want Jason to be thrown into the Lazarus Pit. In the animated version, he finds Jason and he completely brings him back to life with the Lazarus Pit, where it was not completely the case originally in the Winnick story. And then there's the Titans version, which is also different. Scarecrow is at the center of that, using the Lazarus Pit. So there's a whole lot of different stories. Are there any, because the Arkham games one, which you're more familiar with than I am, is there any one that you take issue with?
Well, I feel like the new 52 one, I kind of like move past it. Like I didn't love that sort of adjustment and like bringing in like these characters that I wasn't all that familiar with, because again, like I just said, like one of the reasons why I really liked it was pretty simple, like work under Batman, killed by Joker, brought back by Talia al Ghul, like boom 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 boom. And then you're like introducing him somewhere else. I know Talia al Ghul has like a loose connection there, and he's still like it's showing how he's learning to be like this incredible killer and all this other stuff. But I thought New 52 kind of went in a direction where I didn't really need it to go in necessarily. And maybe that's one of the things with Red Hood. Maybe that's where some people have a pause on, is there is such a cool backstory, and yet not every time you pick up a comic, it's not always the same one. It's like like Batman's is pretty cut and dry to the point where they've done it too many times. And we always joke about how like in the movies, like here it is again, like we get it. But I feel like if they just stuck with Jason Todd's, you'd be in pretty good shape. Like I think that would be one that people could wrap their heads around, and you'd be immediately invested in the character just based on all the people around him.
Yeah, and when you look at like the Arkham game, where it seems like he never died and he was, I guess, manipulated by the Joker at Arkham, like that's
Yes.
and then Titans, like you got a lot of different things going on in Titans. Like I understand where some changes were made, even with the animated version, because you just don't have that backdrop of the comics in the same capacity. But to what you're saying, where certain things are getting changed with his history, it's like, well, we don't. Why do we necessarily need to do some of these things? I love New 52. That's the one. That's what brought me back in. But at the same time, there's just a lot of odd changes that don't necessarily need to happen. I think, like in the end, the way Winnick did it is how I abide by it with Superboy Prime. It's a random one. It's hard to do with like the animated version, but that's what it is.
It's true. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I look at that as like that is sort of the Old Testament as it relates to Red Hood.
Now, then we move over to the appearance of Red Hood. And I don't want to get too bogged down in this, but this is an important thing for me. But just because we're obviously, audio primarily, biggest thing with him, leather jacket, helmet, those are his like defining features, as much as he looks a little bit different these days in DC Comics and Dawn of DC. The biggest thing for me that I like, so like I said before, Dexter Soy, my favorite artist for Red Hood. Do you have someone that jumps to mind when it comes to that?
So it's really good because it's funny. You go back to Under the Red Hood is probably the best comic, but at the same time, he looks very like Deadpool. Like he looks very like Deadpool, Deathstroke, like a dude that has a ski mask kind of thing on. And
Yeah,
so it's in the early stages. It's still cool, but it's only really highlighted by how good the story is.
agreed.
Whereas I'm with you. I think New 52, well, even Rebirth, he looks really good in. Like
Rebirth is where he looks best. That is Soy. That is the best.
Rebirth,
Actually, New 52, while I love it, there are times where he has the mask of like the outlined face, and
yeah.
it bugs me at times.
No, it's true, but I like them taking some chances with some of the other ones because even like
Yeah.
Red Hood Outlaw, like I at first I was like, oh, that's a little, and then I'm like, I kind of got into it. I'm like, all right, that's pretty cool. It's like a good little take on it, a different kind of mask setup.
Agreed.
So I kind of like most of them. I think they've sort of evolved. I think Rebirth, it'd be like if I'm getting a framed poster of one of them, it'd probably be the one from Rebirth. But overall, I kind of like most of them.
Yes. Now I will say I do have the Rebirth logo for the sweatshirt that I'm wearing now. You have the Batman logo. When I think of Red Hood, he's basically had, when it comes to logoing,
Yep.
which is, I mean, for me at least, is huge. He's had no logo initially, and then if you look at Injustice 2, he doesn't have a logo there.
Mhm.
He has the Batman logo, which I think is like the preferred one, and I'll get to why in a second. Then we have the new logo where it's kind of like a weird mask sort of thing, and then there's the Arkham logo that he
Yep.
has, which is pretty cool. But I like the Batman one for him most, as much as he's robbing off of Batman. It's an important part of the character because he's
Sure.
supposed to be embarrassing him, calling him out, and associating the Batman logo with violence, with like not just violence, with killing, which is
Yeah.
everything he stands against.
No, the opposite of it. And there's one comic in particular that we'll get to where like it is really much on the nose about him kind of impersonating Batman. But yeah, this is my favorite one. This is the one that stands out. Like it's for those that are just listening to it, it's sort of like the more like blocky one. It's like a big kind of like big wings, like they're almost like rectangles, like that are
Yeah.
sticking out. But yeah, I like that one. Fills the chest plate out the best.
Of all the big screen Batman logos, is probably closest to the Batfleck one.
Yeah, probably right.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
the same, but it's probably the
oh,
closest
it
to
is.
that.
Right.
Yeah. And then the other thing that's happened with him recently, like, so we talk about how Red Hood, obviously the biggest thing with him is how he's not afraid to take that extra step now that he's not under Batman's thumb for the most part, where he's used guns. Recently, he's, as he's taken on this new look where he's got this mask that instead of it being like a helmet, he's got basically like the Scorpion Sub-Zero type mask, which is a cool look. He's now taken up a crowbar, which obviously we know why he would do that, and a katana sword, and moved away from the guns. So, and then there's also Gotham Knights, which that's a whole other thing where he's using guns, but it's like not lethal bullets or whatever. That's like, I like the idea of having some different weapons thrown in the mix for him, but like we can't. And this is part of the problem that we've run into recently with DC, is like you've kind of tamed him down a little bit. And even in Rebirth, where I love it, he's working under Batman's like approval, and my Red Hood doesn't do that.
No, I don't like it at all. He needs guns and he needs to use the guns and he needs to kill people. Like that's Red Hood. I've always thought he's like a Punisher, kind of like Deadpool. His personality is different than both of those guys, but like that's kind of what he's dealing with. And like Deadpool's the same way. Like Deadpool will use swords, like almost primarily with swords. Yeah. But swords are violent. Swords aren't like hitting somebody with like a batarang or something like that. Like you can take off a head with a well struck sword. So if he wants to use both, the crowbar is great. Like what a personal weapon that is to him and to anybody that he's smashing with it. But he's got to use all that stuff and guns primarily. And you can't have a character with guns that he's like, oh, I'm just gonna like disarm my opponent. It's like, no. You're bringing guns to a fight. You are there to kill the person on the other side. So that's what he needs. The best stories involve him not caring about the result of the other person. Actually, not caring, but like hoping for death on the other side.
Yes, I agree. And then bringing up the Punisher and Deadpool are great comps, but at the same time, when we talk about like how they're similar, the differences were like, okay, so Wade, like he's obviously very kooky and everything, and then we see him on like with Ryan Reynolds' interpretation, he like does kind of care about like the little guy and everything. Then Frank Castle is out to punish everybody who's done wrong. Red Hood is similar in that way, but at the same time, there's a different level of emotion behind it. Like Frank Castle was like always violent, but then obviously the whole thing with his family triggered him. In this instance, he did have a rough upbringing, and at the same time, he's acting. He's like a child acting out against his father, and still like kind of wants to do what his dad does, but wants to at the same time go an extra step to as like basically just giving him the middle finger. And I think that like that's where I've liked him so much. So like, yeah, sometimes he's got to work with Batman. It's going to happen. It's like anything else. But by and large, I want him pissing off Batman as much as possible. And that's something that I want to get to more later. But whenever they're like getting along, it's just like just like
Yeah.
don't give me too much of that.
No, because like the real thing that is like what Red Hood is rooted in is he comes back at whatever way you want him to come back after the Joker killed him, and Batman hasn't killed the Joker. So Red Hood is pissed off, not that Batman let him die, but he's pissed that he didn't avenge his death and kill Joker. And he thinks that if you actually kill these psychos on the other side, you are then preventing so many more deaths. Where Batman clearly has the opposite view. Batman's most important thing is, the deaths of his parents affected him so much, he's never going to kill anybody.
Yeah.
But Red Hood, and I see it more Red Hood's way. Like when you watch these movies with these villains and they just like kill more people and more people and more people, you're like, well, had you killed him like 3 movies ago, he still wouldn't be killing people. That's what Red Hood sees. And so going back to your point about like sometimes there's still some of Batman's training ingrained in him. And it's true. Like he was like very young when he started working with Batman, learned a lot from Batman. So that part's still in there. Like he's not killing good people. Like he's not going out there and slaughtering good people. Like, I don't give a shit. But at the same time, he's feeling like, hey, for the long run, it'd probably be better if we killed, the Riddler rather than just solving all his puzzles for a while.
Yes. Yeah, and we're seeing something similar pop up now in this Gotham War over in the Batman Catwoman crossover event that's going on right now. And Red Hood is very much at the center of it, and that was where Joe was telling me, because I didn't give this a look right away. He was like, "No, this may be the start of Red Hood coming back," and it has been very promising because Catwoman has now trained a bunch of like thugs. Instead of having them go and work for the Joker and the Riddler, she's trained them to be cat burglars like her. So now these crimes are non-violent. They're, and then if they run into an issue, they flee the scene. No theft is worth your life. Red Hood is supporting that because what this has done is led to a significant drop in violent crimes. It's like down by like 70%, 75% or something like that. And Red Hood is supporting that. And we're seeing him push back against Bruce as a result of that. So yeah, the biggest thing is for him is like we're saying, like you want to actually see improvement where Batman kind of just, it's like everybody talks about this now, like how it's like, no, he wants to stop this stuff, but to a certain degree because he needs to be able to keep being Batman.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, let's move over to the different teams that he's been a part of, some more important than others. Most recently, or fairly recently, we've seen him involved with the Suicide Squad and Task Force Z, which was a totally different story that came out, I think, within the past couple of years. Didn't really care for any of those team-ups that he had. I know you weren't too big a fan of those either, right?
No, yeah. It was okay.
Then, of course, we have the larger Bat family that's in the mix. And I mean, everybody knows that's Nightwing, that's Tim Drake, that's Damian Wayne. We have Spoiler now, Cassandra Cain, Signal, all those different characters. Him and Dick Grayson, I think, is generally the most entertaining one, when you see those two paired together. Although I do like him and Damian because when they're on the same page, like they're both, they can get pretty pissy.
Yeah, I think him and any of the Robins, just because there's like a built-in competitiveness there. There's a rivalry with all of them. He's got a different relationship with each one. There's a couple of stories where he and Tim Drake have some real violent interactions.
Mm-hmm.
He and Nightwing, obviously, it's sort of a different thing. Like Nightwing's sort of like that older brother figure, whereas Jason Todd, is like the older brother to the other two. Yeah, I like those. Sort of this might be a mild take. It's not like a hot take, mild take.
Oh my.
As much as I enjoy a lot of the stories with the Outlaws, I know you're going to get to like who the different characters are that he's teamed up with. I think he's actually best suited to be a solo character. I don't love him teaming up that much. I like the occasional like swoop in. You got to kind of reluctantly work with Nightwing, and then you're done. Then he's back to Bloodhaven, and you're doing your own thing. I don't like him just like constantly being in a team as much as he's actually been written. I feel like he's more in a team than he's not, and I would like to see more solo stuff.
I think that's totally fair. I think that's kind of a product of the times that we're in. It just seems like everything's got to be team up stuff, crossover stuff. It makes it more important. You're reaching a wider audience. But I do think you raise a fair point, because we don't see a whole lot of him where it's just him. But I do enjoy him. Like I think with Dick, it's entertaining, and then obviously we see that in the Titans show as well, which I'm not fully caught up on, but I've seen enough of him as Red Hood in that show to have an opinion on it. How did you feel about it? Are you caught up or no?
Yeah, I watched all of Titans. I watched the whole thing. It really kind of limped to the finish. Like, it was not a strong finish. Like because Greg Berlanti, who like oversaw all those CW shows, like he was a part of this too. So I would describe it as a CW show with swearing. Like Arrow, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, they all had their moments. In fact, like season 1 and 2 of Arrow is insane.
Yes.
Yeah, right. That was their calling card. But I think there's some really good stuff in Titans. Yes. The Jason Todd stuff and the Red Hood stuff I thought was kind of I didn't love the kid that played him. I thought he was too small. Like
he was too small. Yeah.
I want like a strong, but then there are some comics where he becomes too big. Like I feel like in Gotham Knights, the video game, he's too big. Like he's kind of like Davey and I on Dork have talked a lot about how if they ever made the movie, now he's getting probably eventually too old, but like Taron Egerton would be the perfect, I think, build, face, size, everything for Jason Todd and for Red Hood. So it's more of a kid version, and they kind of go crazy with it in Titans. Like he's a good Jason Todd Robin at first, because he's a shit heel and nobody likes him.
Yep.
Then he goes like full go, and they sort of like allude to some Joker stuff, but then it's really mostly him and Scarecrow, and so that sort of changes things a little bit. And I don't know, I'm glad that he finally got on screen. So it's one of those things where I'll almost take whatever they give us when it comes to Red Hood. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't think, based on some of the stories that we already have on him, I don't think it was done great.
No, I think that's actually a very, very fair analysis, because while I agree with you with I'm glad we glad we got him on screen, and I'll take that. There are definitely times where that doesn't work, like when we have Taylor Kitsch playing Gambit. I will never get over that one. The no accents was even at a time where I wasn't critical about movies. I was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah,
like,
what is this? Even I knew that Ryan Reynolds Deadpool with his mouth sewn shut. I knew that was a bad idea right away. As soon as I saw it.
So bizarre. But so Curran Walters is the kid who plays Jason Todd. I agree with you. Like, he plays a good Jason Todd Robin. And what the issue is like they kind of just keep him as that when they go into the Red Hood stuff, and you have the whole issue of fear and everything, and the serum that they use. It's a little bit different. I don't think it's poorly done from like Jason Todd pivoting from Robin to Red Hood so fast, because in the books it's like there's a period of time, like there's 6 months where he's dead, and then he's with Talia for like I want to say at least a year. So then there's more training that goes on. So, and there's time for him to grow into being an adult, like physically. So there's a lot of like different stuff at play in the comics that allows for that. But at the same time, like if we're just talking like, does he do Red Hood justice from the comics? Yeah, like it's fine.
Yeah. Nah, right. Yeah, it's also a tough spot to be put in. It was like they didn't really use Joker. Like they sort of like alluded to him, like they showed him like in the shadows and like that kind of thing. And then Batman was kind of in and out on that show, and it was really more about Nightwing and Starfire and like the crew around him. And so Batman was like kind of in and out. And so like if you really want to truly tell the Red Hood story, it's hard to do it with like that supporting cast with like Raven and with like boy, you're like, all right, I guess. But
I mean, they definitely have him pushing limits where obviously he takes out, spoiler for him, where he takes out Hawk. I mean, that was cold. Like that was, and the manner in which he did it, that was Red Hood. That was really good.
They dialed him up to be like a bad guy, to the point where you're like, I don't even know if he's going to be redeemable. Like, I don't know. And I know like Dick eventually kind of talks to him, but like for the other characters, I'd be like, I wouldn't fucking mess with that guy ever again. Like I would never trust him ever again.
Yeah, I mean, like his hair wasn't just slicked back;
Yeah.
it was a little bit more. But yeah, no, I would give it probably like we'll do a dork score for it. Probably like a 3. I'd give him maybe a 3.5.
Are you talking just him on the show or the whole series?
Him, I would say what they did with
Oh,
Red Hood.
yeah. I think
Yeah,
that's fair. I think three and
yeah,
a half out of 6 is
yeah,
is fair. He looked pretty cool. He's rocking
yeah.
guns, different weapons. Like they kind of made him up to be a bit of a badass, but again,
It's
wanted
factoring in
to
the writing and stuff too. I mean, if we're talking just him as Jason Todd, I'd be more inclined to give him a 4 because he did Robin very well.
oh, he's a little shit. Yeah, he was
Oh,
good.
such a little pain in the ass. But anyways, the last team worth noting, the most important team for Red Hood in the course of things, the Outlaws. So we see them introduced with this in New 52, and then we get more of it in Rebirth. Now I know Creeper is one who kind of gets thrown in the mix, but I feel like that was just like one time thing. I can't even remember when that was. Really, the Outlaws are two groups of individuals. You have Arsenal and Starfire, and then we have Artemis and Bizarro. Starfire like was suffering from amnesia at the time, did not remember her relationship with Dick Grayson at all, ends up getting with Arsenal. Then Artemis ends up becoming a love interest of Jason Todd, and then Bizarro goes through his most dynamic run ever, and at the end of it all, he gets smart, then he gets dumb again. But I'm curious, is there a pairing that you preferred?
I thought they both kind of were solid, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I liked Starfire. I know there's a lot of criticism on Starfire, sort of like the way they used her and like she was like over sexualized at
Very
first.
much so.
And yeah, I mean she was. So
Ken
in fact,
Rockefeller had fun.
Titans, going back to the TV show, I thought Starfire on that show was fantastic. I thought
Agreed.
she was one of the highlights of that show. And you know what? I think, and maybe it's more recency bias because I read it more, but I think I liked Artemis and Bizarro and the idea of the Dark Trinity and sort of taking these major tentpole characters from DC and having somebody that has like a relationship or sort of like whatever with Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, and then creating this group. I like that more. And I know Arsenal obviously is an offshoot of Green Arrow, and so you have some of that also in the first group. But if I had to choose between the two, give me the Rebirth group.
Yeah, first of all, the Dark Trinity is
Sick.
fucking like what an actually. So when I first got into reviewing comics, like before I was with Geeks Worldwide, before TLDR, all this stuff, and the other sites that I wrote for, I did on my own personal site. I called my blog Dark Trinity.
It's great.
I love the team. I'm not like I like Bizarro. I thought he was good. I would probably say individually, he's probably number 4 on my list, like as an individual character, but he was a good team up with Jason. Artemis, that said, it's between Artemis and Arsenal for my 1 and 2. I was 1A, 1B, and then Starfire's comfortably at that third spot. I like her relationship with Arsenal and everything too. But yeah, it's like I think it's a fair point that you made before that he's best as a solo character.
Yeah.
And then depending on how DC was to use him, that there are certain ways which it'd be easier to make him a solo character. But the Outlaws team, I do like that. But you also seen him work with Batwoman as well, and some other characters. But like this is the group that he works with. So so was it James Gunn to your head, Sean Gunn to your dick? Which team of these, or which pairing, if you want to go with Bat Family, which one are you sticking with Jason Todd with if he has to only be with one?
I think it would be, is this sort of a cop-out answer? I think it would be the Bat Family only because it wouldn't be all the time. So you'd get, say it was a TV show, you'd get like a lot of Red Hood kind of doing stuff on his own, but then he would cross over with Tim Drake, and then he'd cross over with Damian, and then it'd be all of them together, and then it'd be just him and Nightwing. Like, I think I would prefer that than anything else. Because I also like, and one of the reasons that I'm drawn more towards Red Hood, Batman, Punisher, Green Arrow, is as much as I love superheroes, I kind of like the ones that don't have superpowers. It's like a very strange thing, but I gravitate more towards them. And both groups that he's in, like Bizarro and Artemis, and then Starfire, have like these wild powers, and that can like lead you down like very creative, and you can go do whatever you want with those characters, and that can be fun too. But I like when it's a little bit more grounded, like Daredevil, like more rooted in like just real world, like street level fighting and stuff like that.
I agree, and I as much as I do enjoy those team ups, I do think Bat Family in the end is like the best one. If it was just one, the one I outside of Batman that I like to see him cross paths with most is probably Dick Grayson. And there was a period too that you find Red Hood and the Outlaws, but after the New 52 run, there is a brief Red Hood Arsenal run where they end up messing around. They work with the Joker's daughter, which is not actually the Joker's daughter at one point. She was fine. But those two, just Red Hood and Arsenal, just the pairing, maybe just the writing wasn't that great, but I felt like it could have been better, should have been better than what it was for that run. But in the end, yeah, Bat Family is definitely the best group that he belongs with. Now, you talk a lot about how Jason Todd is the best Robin post Robin career.
Yes. Yeah.
And I do want to touch on some of that where everybody stands in that mix. But when it comes to Robin ranking, I have my list of where each individual goes. Right now, if we're looking at, we have the four dudes that we normally talk about. Then you have Duke Thomas, who's in the mix, Carrie Kelly, Stephanie Brown, which Stephanie Brown is at the bottom of my list because she just hasn't been in it as long. There's nothing you can do about it. Outside of her, though, Jason Todd is my bottom of the barrel Robin. He's such an annoying little fucker. And
he's terrible. Like that's kind of that's why the whole thing is so great. And they probably never would have killed him off if it wasn't for that. Like everybody knows this famous story about they let the readers decide whether or not they were going to kill Jason Todd. They put it out there, and it was like, yes, kill him off. And then that's how they wrote Death in the Family. But because he was annoying. It was like, all right, it was time for Dick Grayson to move on, but they loved the idea of like this dynamic duo, and Batman needed his sidekick. And so they get Jason Todd, and people didn't like him as much as Dick Grayson. And so it was like, all right, enough's enough. So I think he needs to be the worst Robin, because then that sort of allows him to be this great character. Like his second, act in life is this great character.
So on the other end of the spectrum, who is your number one, or maybe your top three if you don't have your number one, if it's too tough a call for you?
I'll go Dick Grayson 1. I'll probably go Carrie Kelly 2.
Okay.
And then Damian 3.
Okay. Wow. So Tim Drake's my number one for Robin specifically. I go Tim Drake, Dick Grayson, Damian. I mean, personally, I just think Tim Drake's, he's the best detective of the bunch. So I think like that's kind of an interesting dynamic with him and Bruce, having another guy who's able to figure things out to that degree. Dick Grayson obviously loved Nightwing, and obviously he's the OG Robin, so it's a little bit, definitely harsher grading for him. But okay, yeah.
I think and part of it too is like a lot of the stories, including some of the New 52 stuff and the death of the family, it's Red Robin at that point. Right. Yes. So like I've just maybe read more stories where he's already graduated to Red Robin, and then here in comes Damian with his sword kicking ass. So I'm just more familiar, I think, with that group.
I like, so those three are definitely like in a grouping above the rest of the bunch. For me personally, I know you have Carrie Kelly a little bit higher. But Damian Wayne is like, I know he's pissed a lot of people off over the years, but I like that about him.
Yeah, he's funny. And then the Talia al Ghul connection, like it's good.
Yeah. Now, post Robin ranking, we both agree Red Hood is number one with a bullet. Who's number two for you?
I'll go Nightwing. Like I do like Nightwing, even though he's a lot like Batman. I mean, it sort of got his similarities and differences. Again, on that Titan show, a great TV adaptation of Nightwing. Like one of the first times we've really even seen that. So, but yeah, like he can clearly carry his own comic. I haven't read the whole run of Tom Taylor, but clearly he can do his own thing. So had I read that, he'd be clearly number two. But yeah, and I think trying to think who else, like I do like some of the Red Robin stuff too. So it might be the same group of characters that'd be like 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I go Jason Todd, Dick Grayson, and Tim Drake as my 1, 2, 3 for post Robin ranking. But at that same time, Red Hood in Dick, I would put Red Hood and Nightwing in the same grouping, and they're head and shoulders above everybody else. But yes, the Tom Taylor run, if you're a Nightwing fan and you're not reading it, you are sorely missing out. Don't worry about reading that Rick Grayson shit. I talked about it plenty, where just not worth your time. I believe Shime is probably our biggest Nightwing fan in the DSG. Although Joe's a huge fan now, so I don't know. But anyways, so Nightwing is number two there. Now, this is this right here is the most important part of our conversation, Rich. Your preferred label for Red Hood. And what I mean by that, everybody, is do you prefer him being titled as a hero? Do you prefer him as a villain? Or do you prefer him as labeled as an anti-hero? Where do you land?
I got to go anti-hero. If I'm picking out of those three, now Red Hood maybe is a character who cannot be defined by a simple label. Friar, he is, but no, if you had to, because I don't want him to be. He really isn't the first two things, right? Like he's not a hero, certainly not in the traditional sense. Batman would not call him a hero. Like he's not that, but he's not a villain. Like he's not trying to take over the world. He's not trying to kill innocent people. Like in like the two guys that I always compare him to, even though again the personalities are different. Like Punisher is an anti-hero, and Deadpool probably anti-hero, and I would say Red Hood. Like those might be three of the best examples of that. So I would say he's clearly in that category.
So certainly not hero. I agree with you there. And I do like he's by and large been an anti-hero. And I do like that. But I feel like anti-hero in a way, obviously he's been, I think, overplayed for a long while. It has. I mean, there's still, look, I still like Wolverine, still like Deadpool, Punisher, all those guys.
Yeah.
I kind of like him as much as I set those three labels. There's no such thing as an anti-villain, but that's kind of how I view Magneto. I know now he's become more of a hero, but that kind of area is where I think he belongs.
Well, Davey and I were talking about, I think he might have came up with this when we were doing Loki season 1. We're like, Loki in the MCU was like their best villain for a while, and then watching the series, like he's really become like an anti-villain. So he's more in that vein. But yeah, I either one, like I think, because it's almost like if you're talking Star Wars, he would be like that gray Jedi. Like he's not full dark side, but he's also not just like doing all the Jedi stuff anymore.
Yeah, it's probably why I like Balin Skull so much, because he's like that. He's in that same kind of region. Because like when I think about Magneto and why I love him so much, why I have his friggin' helmet, is because like he is as much as like he's been viewed as a bad guy for so long. It's like, well, if you look at it from his angle and completely from his side, you can understand why his group of people, which is mutants, why there's a contingency of them who aren't even remotely villains and would want to be on his side. And that's obviously the whole thing, and where what Charles Xavier and Magneto are based off of is Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. You go to Red Hood, obviously totally different type of thing we're talking about here, but he's trying to go against Batman, but still at the same time, he's trying to do good shit. So it's like, it's going to piss some people off, but at the same time, there's going to be a lot of people like you and I who kind of see his whole point.
Well, yeah. And I think even if you asked Red Hood, like, are you a hero or a villain? He'd be like, no. I'm neither of those things. And I don't know what he would describe himself as, but he wouldn't really want to box himself into either one, because he views, like, again, in his life, Batman's a hero, Joker's the villain. He's like, I'm not either one of those guys. I don't want to be either one of those guys. Like the one guy killed me, and then the one guy let me down by not avenging my death. So I don't want, I'm going to be my own kind of thing. And so really, like when you look at like DC or even Marvel characters, they kind of that should be the umbrella. Are they Batman, Joker, or Red Hood? Like which one do they most align with?
So do you think if I had added the category, and I should have just done this off the rip, but anti-villain, if I added that in there, would you still lean more anti-hero, or would you go towards anti-villain?
I would probably go anti-hero still.
Okay.
Like if it was, I would say, like, if it's split, you got to pick he's like 51% Batman, 49% like Joker, like, or like that kind of thing. Like I think he's still got a little bit more of that in him.
He does. It's just, my thing is that, like, where we see with some characters, especially because, like, you know, some of these characters, you want them to appeal, not Red Hood, but like a Wolverine, you want him to appeal to a larger audience. So it's like, yeah, we see him use his claws sometimes, but there are plenty of times where it's like, he should be carving up people a little bit more with adamantium claws. Right. And it's like, I'd rather see him push, and with his aggressive nature, I'd rather see him, like, okay, like, am I debating about pulling this trigger, like, for Red Hood? Like, I'd rather him pull the trigger. Like, that's what I want to see. That's that character where it's just like, yeah, I'm going to lean towards like being a extra aggressive more so. So that's why in the end, I'm anti-villain if we're adding the fourth category.
Yeah. And like to your whole point too, like if they're gonna finally make a movie, it would have to be rated R. Or if he's gonna be on a TV show, it needs to be on HBO, like Titans was, or like it needs to be in a play. Even like Netflix did a good enough job, or not good enough, a great job with Daredevil and Punisher, making that super violent, and like that'd be that. You would have to do the same thing to really, justify making a Red Hood show.
And we're both available as consultants to help out with that sort of stuff as well. I mean, we're doing the definitive Red Hood podcast. So, I mean, I don't know what more you need. And then speaking of, whenever he gets on the big screen, different mediums where people can interact with the character, because as we mentioned, like we've gotten quite a bit of them, but he still feels underutilized. So you have the comics, you have video games, you have TV. For film, you do have something, but not, just a little bit. And then we have action figures, which is, obviously a very different medium, but I have a lot of Red Hood action figures. You have a ton of Red Hood shit too, right?
I don't have any. I mean, I have pops. I don't have I have more pops in like just the comics than I do. I mean, I'm wearing a fucking zip-up hoodie that I ordered off a website that I really never should have given my credit card to. I don't even know where I got this thing. It was a bizarre purchase, but I love it. It's a little tight, but I like it. I got a hat. I got a goddamn Red Hood hat. So yeah,
that's a hat. That's what that is. Okay.
It's on top of a trophy, but it's
okay. I remember you getting that one now. Okay.
It's not bad. I look like an asshole, and even more so I don't wear it, but I like to display it.
Happens to the best of us. But yeah, it's so I have there's a mini Injustice. I have McFarlane Red Hood. I have Arkham Red Hood. I forget what the DC brand was before McFarlane took over, but I have that Red Hood as well. So I have, and I have the Pop. So I got a lot of Red Hood action figures. But yeah, so that like from there, like talking about the action figures for McFarlane. So you obviously have the Pops, you have that end of the spectrum, and then on the McFarlane side, you have the classic, which is like our classic version, which is him with the helmet, which I'm showing on the screen for those watching on the stream with the guns. Like this is the best one. Period for me. We do have the Three Jokers one though, which is pretty fucking sweet. I'm surprised you don't have that one.
That is sick. No, but you got me that card. I got that displayed back here.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Oh, which one did I get?
Joker card. It's like half Red Hood, half Joker. Yeah.
Yes, for those watching on the stream, that is I got a couple of those. They're like I was lucky to pick one up for you. Yeah, those are sweet. And then we have the Gotham Knights Red Hood, and then you have the Arkham one as well.
Yeah.
The Gotham Knights, that's a whole thing. You don't own the video game, right? Am I correct?
So I was super excited about it when it first was announced, clearly, because it's Red Hood, and then it's also the Bat family. So I was excited to play. I remember talking with Davey about we're gonna play it. And then it comes out. Well, first of all, it took me forever to get a PS5. But anyway, that's a side story. And then so it was got horrible reviews. And then Davey ended up playing it, and he's like, it's okay. He's like, Red Hood's actually the best character to use, but he's got this weird like jump feature and like this whole thing. So I've actually never played it. So
okay, I thought you didn't get it. That was the only reason I was going to buy a PS5. I was like, okay, I'll maybe try other stuff somewhere along the line, but I don't play video games as much as you guys do anymore. And I was like, oh, like Red Hood in a video game. Yeah, I have Injustice 2, so I get to use them there. I haven't played that in a while, but like this is different. Like I get to use, like it's more open world stuff. I saw the situation with the guns, and then I saw that fucking jump mechanics, and it's like, just give him the same thing that Nightwing has, where he kind of flies. Like, he never has it, but it makes way more sense than the other shit he's doing. Where it's like powers he got from the Lazarus Pit. I ain't even seen Ra's al Ghul do that shit.
I don't want that. I don't need that at all. That's disappointing.
It's ridiculous. By the way, I forgot totally on my desk. I have a Red Hood notebook too. So again,
look at that. That's a nice piece.
I got that on what is it? The T Public. Like you can get a ton of Nice and easy. But speaking of the video games, obviously he is in the Arkham games, which I've talked to people who don't really know, who don't read comics, but loved the game. And again, I've like, I know stuff about it, but I never played the Arkham games more than like a few minutes. It's for my own safety. I would get sucked into that shit.
Yeah.
But you have like, how is Red Hood portrayed in that game?
Well, so he's the Arkham Knight. Like, so it's like a big reveal at one point. Like you're going up against this character. First of all, those are the best games in the world. Like I love those games. I put those up there with like the Grand Theft Auto games, and I don't even know what else. Like those are the best games. And so going back to Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, Arkham Origins is a little step back because it's a different group that makes it. But then Arkham Knight, I love. Now, the one issue with Arkham Knight, not a Red Hood issue, but you use the Batmobile way too much. Like, one of the criticisms was like, hey, there's no Batmobile. And then they're like, oh, we got Batmobile in this one. And like, you have to use it a lot. And I'm like, all right, I don't want to use it anymore. But no, the Arkham Knight is this character that you're fighting. And one of the reasons why the game is so good is there's a million characters in these games and there's a million Easter eggs. And so even characters that aren't in it, you'll like go buy something that's like Queen, like, you know, Oliver Queen owns it or something. And then so it's sort of like a reveal, like, as to who Arkham Knight is. And it makes sense because he's like such a fucking good killer. So it was a little bit of a twist, but I liked it. I thought it was really solid.
Okay, nice. I mean, it's by all accounts I've heard that he's awesome in the game.
Yeah.
And then in Injustice 2, where he is a playable character, awesome.
Yep.
Absolutely love him. Do you have that?
Yeah, I haven't played it in forever, but I do have Injustice 2. That was one of the first games I think I got. Yeah.
I think that was the only reason I got the game. Like, I do use some other characters on that, but it's like, no, I need to.
You know
like,
who actually wasn't, bizarrely enough, was a character I used a lot, was Blue Beetle.
Really?
I used a lot of Blue Beetle in that game. Yeah.
He looked good on the game. Like, the character designs are awesome on that.
Solid.
And then, of course, there's Gotham Knights, as we've talked about already. We've talked a lot about the Titans TV show, but that is the only space I think we've seen him. Has he been on the Harley Quinn show? I don't think so.
I'm not caught up on it, so if he's popped in, I haven't seen it. But I think somebody would have tweeted at me if he was. So
Yeah.
I don't think so.
That's a good point. But if he was there at all, it would have been quick. But then we have the film, the only film that he's been in that we haven't really talked about a whole heck of a lot, Under the Red Hood, which is an animated movie. It's, you know, again, it's very similar to the comic. There are some differences, of course. How he's brought back to life is the biggest thing. I do understand it in that story. How do you feel? You did a review on Dork for Under the Red Hood, right?
Good question. I don't remember if we did. We definitely talked about it here and there. I know we did a Batman the Long Halloween, because that is my favorite Batman story, but Under the Red Hood is right up there as well. And the animated is great because there was a time where DC animated movies were all awesome, and now it's more hit or miss. Now it's like, you know, you're not really sure what you're gonna get.
Yeah,
but no, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great, and even like the differences in both, like, fine. Like, I think it's one of the best DC animated movies that they've made. Yeah. I will say, I don't know if this counts or not. The only other film I would maybe put him under is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. In the Batcave, there is a Robin suit with the Joker spray painted all over it. Now, they never confirm it. It never comes back. But my assumption, I think everybody's assumption, is that was Jason Todd's. So I'm thinking Ben Affleck's Batman had a Jason Todd. Now, he probably never became Red Hood. Maybe not. But I'm guessing that might be kind of a Jason Todd Easter egg.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not, then the only time it just doesn't make any sense. There's only one instance where we've seen Jason Todd and Red Hood kind of get Jason Todd and Dick Grayson get flipped around, and that's in the Murphyverse. But even then, Jason Todd still was believed to have been killed by the Joker initially in that one. And we're not even getting into that story because it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was hopeful, like, when it's like, oh, like, that's right, like, we got Robin in there, and like, it's got like the Joker killed him. Like, are we gonna see Red Hood? But yeah, that DC films, they got their own.
Right.
But then the most important medium for all this is the comics. Like, there's plenty of stuff there. I think we could still get more. I think some of the recent stuff. When it comes to Red Hood comics, is there a favorite arc, story, favorite run, creative team, whatever? What, like, for Red Hood, for you, what are you looking for if you're going back to read Red Hood stuff?
I mean, it really is Under the Red Hood is the number one most important thing. Judd Winnick is, in my mind, the best writer of Red Hood. So it's Under the Red Hood. It's also The Lost Days, which was like a 6-issue run. He also, and I brought this up to you a bunch of times, Winnick did a lot of Green Arrow, and then there's an arc, and you can get it in the collected edition. It's called The Road to Jericho, where Batman ends up going to Star City because he's in pursuit of Red Hood, and Red Hood is going after Speedy, who is like the Red Arrow version there, and at this point with Oliver Queen, and it's like this whole thing to do with how basically Red Hood saw what being a young, like, number 2 to a big superhero, like what that could be and like how that can affect your life and everything else like that. So he's fucking around with Speedy and with Green Arrow and everything, and Batman's in pursuit. Deathstroke is in this in it as well. So it's really good. So I would say those 3. And then quickly, I think just for the setup to it, obviously death in the family is important. Hush is really important. Hush kind of gives you this idea that you can even bring Jason Todd back. Now that's all ends up being kind of like a red herring, but you see him and you're like, oh shit, like could it? And then that really allowed Judd Winnick to take the ball and run with it. And also I'm going to go all the way back to Killing Joke, where that's where you get Joker and like the Red Hood and like the whole thing with like the Red Hood gang and as to why Jason Todd chooses the Red Hood. Like it's not by accident. Like this was an old Joker alias, and like before that was Joker's origin story. Like he was in the Red Hood when he went into like the Vata Chemicals. So I think those are like the old ones, like the either Jason Todd or like Joker related. Then that sort of springboard you into all the Judd Winnick stuff.
That's a good call. And yes, in the end, if you're only going to read one Red Hood thing, you have to go and read Under the Red Hood. I will say that was not what I read first. I actually read the New 52 stuff first because you had given me enough background where I was okay. So I'm always going to hold the New 52 near and dear to my heart. But I'll tell you what, read Under the Red Hood. And then if you're like, okay, I want to read more, but I can't, I'm intimidated by New 52 or Rebirth because of how long they are. Another real good Red Hood story. I know The Road to Jericho is the other one, but I think Three Jokers is a great space for Red Hood. In general, it's really well done. But for Red Hood, especially, like this is like, that's the fucking guy right there. Like a little unhinged. He's working with Batman, but Batman can absolutely not fucking control him. I really, really like what they did with him in that story.
I would agree. Three Jokers is great. Another one. Now this one is definitely more mixed. There are some people that don't feel like this is a good Red Hood because this is over. Like you and I call for him to be more violent and to be, so sort of not only be on that line, but maybe step over the line. Batman Battle for the Cowl.
Oh, yep.
Yeah. This one's intense. So this one actually isn't really Red Hood. It's more Jason Todd taking over the mantle of Batman, even though Dick Grayson's supposed to. Tim Drake is like, I'll do it because Nightwing's like hesitant to do it. So this comes after the Batman RIP run. So in this run, Batman's gone. And so it's like, all right, what's going on? And so you get Jason Todd in a bat suit with guns. And like Tim Drake and Dick Grayson are like, what the fuck? Like, we can't have this. And so he's intense. I like it. Like I personally am a fan of Battle for the Cowl. I would recommend that one too.
Yeah, that's written and drawn by Tony Daniel, who's done quite a bit of awesome stuff. He did some Deathstroke for I think it was New 52. He's got Edenwood coming out, which is really cool too. Got an advanced look at that. But yeah, like that is. I think that's actually a great call too, because that's the thing in the end. It's not just like love Red Hood, love his look, but I really just like what Jason Todd has turned into in general. He can go and take on a different mantle if you want to. I'm not saying go and do it, but I really like how he's evolved in this time. Another good one is the Urban Legends story that was written by Chip Zdarsky, and I don't have the artist jotted down. But
somewhere back there.
That was really, really well done. My only thing with that is he goes through this major crisis, and it's really well done, but it like sets up later for Jason Todd to kind of become more tame, which is an issue that I've had recently with him. And it's like, nah, come on. Like, I get it. It makes sense for the story that just happened, but can someone please like make him snap the fuck out of it? And I will say where Chip went and like set the stage for Red Hood to kind of get toned down a little bit. Now we have this Gotham War happening. Now Red Hood is starting to really push back against Batman again, and it is very promising where we're seeing the character go. So
I think it might have been Matthew Rosenberg. Might have been who
he's the grifter
writer. Oh, okay. So I was just reading the book. I didn't read the whole panel. All right.
Yeah.
Another one where it's kind of similar, where he really goes after Tim Drake, is Teen Titans: Life and Death. Another one where Red Hood is all over that. Another one that I bought, and it's decent enough, and like if you just want to read the character, Robin War. So this
Oh
has
yeah,
all the Robins, all the former Robins are involved in that versus like the Court of Owls.
yes. Was that New 52 or was that Rebirth? I can't remember for the
That
life
might
of
have
me.
was that like in between or was that at the end of New 52?
It might have been the end of New 52. I think that's actually what it was.
Might
Yeah,
have been at the very end of it.
I
Speaking of the New
hate.
52, so the New 52, I think there's a lot of good, right? It's pretty mixed bag overall, like if you take all the New 52 stuff, but the Red Hood specifically is more good than bad. But I think
Yep.
the Death of the Family run,
Mm-hmm.
which is probably volume 3 of Red Hood and the Outlaws. But if you get that trade, it's pretty thick because it involves like crossovers from everybody, but they put it together where you can just read it seamlessly, where it's like Batman trying to get all of his Bat family members back as Joker has them. This is the one where Joker famously like has his face cut off and he's like wearing masks, and like it gets pretty intense. And
Mm-hmm.
so and you get plenty of Red Hood, you get plenty of Nightwing and Red Robin and the whole crew or Oracle. So like I like that one a lot.
Yeah, and I will say for like with when it comes to New 52, obviously Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Batman run is the
Yeah.
shit. Like that is the stuff from New 52. But after those guys, for me, it's Red Hood and the Outlaws and it's Deathstroke. Those are like Christopher Priest run. He had a few different artists on that run, but
Yeah.
that shit, those two were my absolute favorite. Like Red
Wait,
Hood, I went.
are you talking Deathstroke from 52 or from Rebirth?
You know what? You're right.
Rebirth.
No, you're absolutely right. So that's right. He was fucking Rebirth. Okay,
He killed it
that's where.
in Rebirth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Tony Daniel did some of the stuff from New 52. And I think Kyle Higgins did as well. But anyways, yeah. So Red Hood was my favorite from New 52, and then from Rebirth, it's the Deathstroke stuff with Christopher Priest. Great call.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the artists, like for Red Hood, look up some Dexter Story stuff. It is like he has some
Yes. Yeah.
awesome covers. Like even when he went off the character, that he did some covers afterwards. Like his shit is, and there's been some crazy ass variant covers with him over the years. When Yasmin Putri did it, the artist for Dark Knights of Steel, like she did a lot of covers primarily. She did some really cool stuff. So I know it's harder to find single issues, but there's some really good Red Hood covers out there. I like cannot get enough of that character, quite honestly. So yeah, all right. So I think that for me, I think that we've covered everything from Red Hood that we absolutely had to, Rich. Do
Yeah.
you have anything else?
No, I think we got to all of them. Like you said, he has the long run in New 52 and the long run in Rebirth, both with teams, but then you can find other stuff where he kind of pops in and out. And like what's cool, like with Three Jokers, is you just never know what's gonna pop up with the Black Label. And we just did an episode on that last week, but like
Yep.
DC Black Label, you never know who's gonna take a run at it. And like that's a character that is like perfect for it. So even if it's gonna be like a little different spin on it, like, all right, I'll check it out. I'll see what they want to do with that character. But like we sort of started the podcast talking about, when are they going to put him in live action? I don't understand it. Maybe James Gunn's got it up his sleeve, but if he's working on like starting from scratch and like creating like Superman and like casting all these, like I feel like now we're another 10 years away, like
Yeah.
minimum from getting Red Hood.
I've said this to anybody who will listen to me, which I know is not a whole lot of people, but like if you're gonna like whenever they were trying to figure out the whole DC situation, I know Gunn's in the mix now and he's got his whole plan, but before he was in the mix, I was like, just start it with the Bat family. And
Yes.
you can stem out from there. Start it with Batman, have Nightwing already in the mix, and maybe start with Tim Drake. Maybe like have him be your Robin. Then you can bring Red Hood in, avoid all the Jason Todd Robin bullshit. And then you can stem out because Dick Grayson has the Titans. Red Hood ends up doing the Outlaws. You have a few different combinations you can go with there. And obviously Batman can later bring on in a Wonder Woman, a Superman, and all that stuff. But they always go with the fucking legacy characters. It pisses me off.
Well, and that's why I wonder if maybe our only hope, and I don't think you'll do it because it takes way too much, but the Matt Reeves Batman, which is working in its own universe. And so if the Robert Pattinson first Batman was year 2 Batman, he wouldn't have even Dick Grayson yet. So if you let him get a little bit older, then he has Dick Grayson, and then not that you want to fast forward through it, but maybe that's your only hope to get like a young Jason Todd with him in a few years. And then I mean, imagine Robert Pattinson as the Batman in the Under the Red Hood storyline. It'd be
I mean, I really enjoyed that, and
yeah.
I feel like if they do that, they're going to make him a kid. like it's not like I want that to work. But like Robert Pattinson looks so fucking young that like I just have I don't know how they do that. I
20
hope,
years from now, we're gonna get our Red Hood movie.
yeah. Well, I mean, and then if you're trying to cast him, I know you said Taron Egerton.
Yeah.
The other guy for me, who I think it's too late for him now, the ship has sailed, but the guy who voiced him in Under the Red Hood, I really do think that Jensen Ackles would have made a good live action Red Hood.
I'm good with that. He'd be good.
Yeah. Either way, those two guys would have worked out, but I just, you know what, Gunn gives us a chance at least because he does like these like not as popular characters that he can throw in the mix, but I'm not holding my breath anytime soon, unfortunately. And because also I want him to be done right. If you're going to go and make him too tame, then it's not going to work for me. But that is going to do it for this Red Hood character story. Rich, tell the people where they can find you.
At Dork Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And that's pretty much it. We stream our episodes live Monday nights on YouTube.
Yes, of course, we've had a lot of people joining from the Dork stream. And, would you look at that? Joe is using our show account to go and complain about me not playing his video. I am really not sorry, but I told you he was going to be pissed. But, all right, so next week we will be back at it on TLDR. Back to normal stuff, I believe. We'll be doing a solicit because it's the start of the month. But you never know, so make sure you subscribe on our audio channels. And you can find us on YouTube and Twitter, obviously, if you're finding us just now on the #Dork YouTube page. But I'm not going to use the normal sign-off. Joe would be pissed. Now, you know what? Until I see you next time, Rich, stay sexy.
You know it.